bringing the people behind our food to life.
Hi there. Today we're going to take you guys through the magical process of turning pork belly into bacon. It's a fairly simple process, and one that I think that you'll find with a very small amount of work is going to give you something that is going to make such a big difference in the product that you're going to end up with that you'll thankfully do this year-round just to have a good supply of quality bacon on hand. You're going to have to start off with raw pork belly, which is something that you're going to have to talk to your butcher about. You want boneless and skinless belly just to save yourself some labor, and it's going to look basically like this. They've removed the skin from the fat side, and they've taken the spare ribs off of the lean side. For ease of work, and also for reasons we'll talk about later, I'm going to break this down into thirds, and those basically the reasons are the more surface area you get, the more smoke flavor you get. So I'm going to increase that surface area by cutting it into smaller pieces. The next step in the process is to make our rub. This is dry cured bacon, which is a little bit different than a wet cured bacon in that we're going to be removing moisture from the belly itself throughout the process, and that's going to end up giving us a denser product. That traditional bacon that you grew up with versus the wet cured bacon that you may see in stores today. It's a little bit slower process, but I think that the payoff is pretty significant. Our basic ratios are 2 pounds of brown sugar to about a cup of kosher salt. And when I say kosher salt, that is the larger flake salt that you can find in most grocery stores now. It's important that you don't just switch out that ratio with regular table salt. The granules are smaller, so you'll end up with a little bit saltier bacon in the end. Salt is fairly inexpensive, so it'll be easy to get your hands on. Once we've mixed all that up, you have your basic rub. I separately make a spice rub, and this is something that you can make any version of for your own taste. You can do caraway, you could do southwestern bacon, which you may use toasted cumin and coriander. My basic rub is equal parts of cayenne, chili flake, smoked paprika, and sweet paprika. Again, you can change those ratios to your own tastes. Basically, all we're doing here is adding a little extra layer of flavor. In this case, it's going to be nice spice that you're going to catch on your first bite when you taste that bacon. Or if you use bacon in a recipe as a base for flavor, it's going to just add that extra depth. Once you've mixed up all the spices, you can just apply real lightly. Doesn't have to be exactly even. This is going to hopefully be carried down into the meat throughout the time in its dry rub. This is not an exact science. Now that we've got the spice on there, we can actually apply the rub. You can use any kind of vessel for this that's not porous. So you want something either porcelain or glass or something food grade plastic. This is called a hotel pan. It's used in restaurants, but you could also use a jelly roll pan or any deep cookie pan. You basically want something that's deep enough that you're going to allow moisture to form and run off without spilling all over your fridge. So something with high sides, an average jelly roll pan is probably the easiest thing. So we've got that mix that we made earlier, a little bit down on the bottom. And you want to make sure the fat side, which is the white side of the meat, goes down to begin with. It's going to give that salt a chance to carry those spices that we applied deep down into the meat and get them trapped there. So you can apply fairly liberally. You want to make sure that all the edges are covered. And this is something that's also modifiable to your tastes. If you try this recipe and you think it's a little too sweet, you can back off on the brown sugar just a little bit or up the salt a little bit. Helps to massage the salt down into the meat just a little bit to get the action going. And what you're going to see is over the first few days, that salt is going to start working its way down into the meat and it's going to pull out moisture. And as it does that, that dry rub that we're putting on here is going to kind of turn wet and eventually kind of soupy. So this is ready to go in the fridge. It helps to put a little plastic wrap tight down over the top before you put it in there. Just keep any outside flavors from getting in there. After about 4 days, we're going to take these out, flip them over so that the flesh side is down and the fat side is up. And we're going to take some of that wet brine that's down in the bottom form and reapply that over the top. You want to make sure that between the pieces of meat you've got fresh cure, because anywhere that it's just meat on meat without any of that salt, you're going to end up with uncured spots. And in the end, that's not going to make a huge difference except for the flavor. So to keep it even, you want to just make sure to redress as you flip those. After about a week in the fridge, you're going to have something that looks a lot like this. You can see that all that syrup down in the bottom is what happens to the rub as it pulls moisture out from the pork. And you can see what started out as really light pink pork has darkened already. It looks pretty close to finished bacon, but at this stage, it's ready to cook. The important thing here is you want to get the excess rub off of there, and that's just simply running it under cold water and massaging it with your hands. You'll be able to feel that kind of granular sugar wash away. And then the last, and maybe the most important step in this part of the process, is to give the bacon a couple of days in the fridge. 1 day may do, depending on how well the fan circulates air in your fridge. It may take a few days, but you can see what starts out as a glossy sugar coating will eventually dry and become what they call a pellicle. And that's basically denatured proteins that have allowed to rise to the top. All of that moisture, the actual water that was in that rub has dried off, and you have a nice tacky surface. This is really important because the smoke that you're going to apply to the meat needs that tacky surface to actually adhere that smoke flavor. If it's wet with water, if you put it in right after rinsing it, instead of getting those delicious farol flavors, the really great fruit flavors that come from wood, you're going to instead get soot. And you'll know that because there'll be a kind of a black coat on the outside. You don't want that. You want those nice delicate flavors that come from the farols. So you want to make sure that the meat is nice and dry. From this point, we're ready to go into the smoker. It kind of depends on how you're smoking, what you're going to put it on. Some people hang their bacon. If you have a Weber grill or something that's deep enough, you may want to do that. They have hooks that you get. You can hang it from the lid, and then it allows all the sides to get equal smoke. I use an electric smoker, so I'm going to use flat racks that are basically like this guy. Make sure to have your smoker preheated. Once that's preheated, you can just take this on out there, slap it in there, and make sure it's loaded up with chips, and then we're ready to go. As far as the smoking of the bacon goes, the world's your oyster. You can smoke in a Weber grill, you can smoke in an electric smokehouse like the one I'm using here. You could even smoke in a cardboard box with a small electric single filament burner and a cast iron pan. Basically what you're looking for is a slow, consistent heat. I aim for about 170 degrees, and it'll take about 4 hours. The more consistent the smoke is, the better of a shell you're going to get, the more flavor you're going to get. But really, the simpler the process, the harder it is to mess up. So it's worth sometimes, if you're going to do it regularly, investing in a small smokehouse for around $80. You can get exactly what you're looking for. Key points for smoking. You're looking for about 170 degrees as consistently as possible. And it tends to take around 4 hours. It can go as long as 5 hours if it's more humid out. But 170 degrees for about 4 hours is what I aim for. So, once you've smoked the bacon, an important thing to keep in mind is you don't want to slice the bacon right out of the smoker. All the fat's still going to be in a very liquid state. All the juices that are in the bacon that have been trapped by the shell that's coating the outside are still going to be in there, and you want to give them a chance to set up. So, you want to make sure to put the bacon in the fridge overnight, give it a chance for all those magic parts to kind of solidify. I like to do nice thick cut bacon on my bacon at home. It'll give it a chance to cook up a little slower, get crispier, and you'll really get a lot more of that smoke flavor. Now we can fry this up and see how it turned out. Originally, bacon was a way to salt pork that might spoil sooner than you can get to it. Add smoke to that, preserve it. Something you could set on a shelf quietly and pull from as you need it. Slice a little off here and there. We don't necessarily use bacon in the same way these days. Over the years, we've added sugar, make it a little sweeter. But, you know, for a frontiers person, it was the perfect product to have. You've got all that bacon fat that you can use for cooking, all the extra end bits that are left after you slice up pieces for breakfast that you can add into soup or stocks or just about anything. I always cook bacon nice and slow. Believe it or not, I think the microwave is one of the best ways to cook it. The slower you go, the more chance you'll have to render off all that extra fat like this. And then you can strain that off, keep it in the fridge for cooking eggs or anything else. And you can see that this bacon doesn't sputter as much as bacon you might get in the store, and that's because of that dry curing process where we've pulled out as much of the moisture as possible, so the water isn't sputtering in the fat and spitting up hot fat at you. It's cooking up nice and slow and gentle. There you go. Tastes like bacon.
1, 2, 3.
And when I moved back, I thought it was great that we had evolved in such a leader in the food culture and food economy. But the one thing that transcends the entire experience, which is salt, was missing from the equation.